right, so good afternoon. My name is Jimmy Cesario. I am the Federal Director for our healthcare patch here at Datadog. Absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon. Really looking forward to the panel discussion, which will be focused on the future of federal healthcare IT, modernization and action. Absolute pleasure to be joined by both Jennifer Freese. Jennifer is a health solutions architect at Leidos, as well as a former deputy director within Health and Human Services, along with stints at both NIH as well as U.S. Army. I'm also joined by Wade Zarrillo, who is also from CMS. He is the director of our Infrastructure and User Services group within CMS OIT. An absolute pleasure to have you both here.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could talk about federal healthcare modernization for days, but we have about 10 or 15 minutes, so we're going to jump into it. So first question for Wade. So CMS runs some of the most business critical applications, certainly across HHS, if not all of government. And when you think about modernization, right, a lot of folks go to people, process, technology, and the outcomes, but there's also risk, right? When you look at the risk factors of modernizing critical systems within CMS, how do you guys kind of go about that process?
Yeah, great question. And, I lead a group that operates 3 mainframes today, right? And we do a little over 1 million claims processing a night, right? And we do a little over 1.3 billion claims per year, right? And so when you say we run mission critical systems, we absolutely run mission critical systems for all of our 69 million plus beneficiaries, right? And so when I say real risk, right, the real risk is process, right? Because the process informs the culture, right? Because the culture that may be suboptimal that we have today was built and designed and educated on the process we have, right? And the process failures that we've had over the past, right? And so we're really focusing on improving the the process across our agency, which will then lead to cultural improvements and then, leading us to more innovation.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And, a little bit of a segue for Jennifer, right? And we all have the goal for modernization, right? But from a continuity of care, continuity of services, especially within federal health care, these systems can't break, right? There can't be real disruption. So how do you go about your process for evolving and modernizing when continuity of care is so critical?
Well, one of the things we did is we made sure we had stakeholder engagement. That's extremely important when you have everybody on board, physicians, nurses, doctors, even security staff, because you have to consider physical access, laboratory access, all kinds of various components and pieces that are involved in this. And you will have to patch. We had at one time at NIH in 2019, we had an audit by GAO, and we found out that we hadn't patched our biosafety labs. So we had to start doing vulnerabilities and patching them and working with customers. And we had a biosafety lab group that was compiled of 40 stakeholders. But that work has to continue, but there has to be communication, collaboration, coordination, the 3 C's, to make sure that you're successful in what you deliver and continuing that care for patients and critical mission research.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, when we talk to some of our customers, right, like doctors, nurses, practitioners, they want to take care of patients, right? They don't want to worry about the tech. They just need it to work. But to your point, collaboration and getting stakeholder feedback, I think, is critical. Modernization, Wade, without disruption is obviously the goal. But it was almost like Haj alluded to earlier, right? It's iterative, it's a process. And sometimes there's just the idea of galvanizing to start, right? Before you kind of take the leap. So amongst your team, where have you had to accept potential short-term pain to move kind of the goal forward and kind of achieve that vision?
Yeah, so hopefully you can hear me this time.
I got you this time.
Okay, great.
Yes, we're good.
Yeah, so I would say that we've definitely experienced some short-term pain as it relates to velocity, right? That we can consume some of these changes and some of the innovation and streamlining that we wanted to do, right? We at CMS were charged in 2025 to cut around $648 million from the overall CMS IT budget, right? We cut 758 million across the overall IT budget. So we're asked to do more with less, right? And so that we had to really dig deep as a team, right, to find efficiencies, right, to find streamlines amongst our tools that could enable us to continue to innovate in the areas that we could still continue innovation in. And we've exceeded that and seen great results as we galvanized around each other as an organization, as an IT department, in order to reach common goals, shared services, cost consolidation, providing more value for our customers. And we've done so much more with less in 2025 and 2026. And we are, on our way to a very strong journey in a multi-cloud environment, right? And we've seen extreme steps forward in our security and cybersecurity posture that was a result of us just coming together as people and as coworkers for a common good.
Yeah. No, I mean, we see it across all of our customers that, right, there's mission areas, there's business areas, and sometimes just getting people in the same room to have a conversation around where can we deliver on efficiencies or where can we kind of focus our resources really does drive outcomes to where, hey, this is something through conversation that we identified and figured out. Jennifer, you've seen kind of both sides. You spent the majority of your career in government, now transitioning to the private sector. But when you look at the initiatives that you've supported from a government perspective and now bringing kind of that expertise from industry, where do modernization efforts like typically stall, or where do they have trouble?
A great question. I think every Fed could raise their hand to this one. The silos. You have more territorial turfdom than really people wanting to collaborate, so you really have to bring them together to see the benefits. Yeah. And you have to sell that. You have to be able to sell the benefits and for them to see you could have a seamless process rather than having all these legacy systems that don't feed into each other. That you could eventually migrate these to low-code, no-code platforms and save yourselves tons of money with the development and maintenance and operations of these systems by moving them to low-code, no-code platforms. And I think with the current administration, this has been emphasized much more than ever before. And I think people are having to put down those walls and silos and start finally having to work together to modernize the systems. Yeah,
no, that's great feedback. Kind of pivoting, right, and this is kind of in your arena, Wade, from an infrastructure perspective. I remember Fatara scorecards about 5 years ago, Decoy, or Data Center Optimization Initiative, came out. And I remember I was at, I think, a FedScoop event. One of the CIOs made a comment and said, like, hey, we're talking about data center consolidation, but I could see in 5 years from now talking about cloud consolidation, right? But when you look at kind of cloud and observability and having insight into your systems and services, there's kind of fundamental areas of performance, security, and cost. When you look at that, how does CMS make decisions in practice, right, as you invest more in cloud and optimize systems?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, we are going down the journey of cloud consolidation. And, Jennifer had mentioned siloed environments. And, at CMS, we've had historically components that have their own AWS environment or their own cloud environment or their own hosting data center environment. We're in the process of consolidating all of them in to a CMS hybrid cloud that is for the enterprise, right? But I would say that it's very easy to make decisions about performance, security, and cost conflict in a silo by yourself as a component or a person, right? What it takes is partnership, right? It takes partnership with your peers, it takes partnership with your colleagues, and it takes partnership with your business stakeholders. For us to make a decision that affects security or performance or cost, right, on our own as an IT shop is not being inclusive of our customers to what that may impact, right? Whether that impacts their application or that impacts their mission, that we think is a good decision, right? That may have adverse impact for them, and it might make sense for 90% of the enterprise, but the other 10, it does not, right? We made a very important effort to do some cost consolidations in cloud in 2025, but we ran into some customers that said, I absolutely cannot do this because it will have this adverse impact on my environment. And we met them where they were and understand and were had empathy for exactly what they needed to be successful, and so that's really important. But I go back to what I said before. It's partnership with your immediate colleagues and your immediate peers and decision makers amongst the agency, and CMS has never been stronger in that instance, where we used to work even within our Office of Information Technology in our silos and our components within, and now we're doing that as a team making decisions across security, infrastructure, senior management, right, shared services and platforms.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen that firsthand through our partnership, but then also through other agencies where they're really trying to figure out ways of how do we centralize these services, how do we offer them out for various use cases and support for our customers. So, Jennifer, on the topic of modernization, obviously agencies are at varying stage, whether their cloud journey or their application modernizations, but just high-level advice. What would you give an agency that's maybe just starting out on their cloud journey based on your experience? What's a kind of a piece of advice you'd give them?
One thing I don't think people think enough about is the beginning. A cloud migration strategy, a plan, looking at what you're going to need to put in the cloud, the timelines. I don't think people were realistic on the timelines. I think they thought this cloud was magically going to absorb everything. But they didn't realize that you have to have the infrastructure, architecture, all of that set up in the cloud to make sure it's going to work correctly. And it takes time. It's not a quick fix. Can take a year to 2 years depending on how big the systems are. And the cost is not all the time cheaper. You have to look at the cost and transaction cost and really study that to do a cost-benefit analysis. And I don't think in the beginning of these projects people take the time to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Wade, I'll ask that the same thing. I mean, CMS was one of the early adopters across HHS. I mean, I think you guys have been in the cloud for 10 plus years. Probably 90% of your infrastructure sits there now. Just thoughts of looking back over your 10 plus years at CMS. If an agency was just starting to dip their toe in, hey, how do we re-architect our applications, or we're thinking about multi-cloud, kind of what would the advice be?
Yeah, my advice would be to not commit to a single cloud service provider right from the start. Right, and also don't take any historical knowledge into account on that. You should start with a journey that includes research and development. It includes familiarization. Right, at this point in time, right, we have cloud service providers that all offer very similar subsets of data that can be very unique as to how they can meet your challenges as an organization or an application. And so what I would say is take it slow. Right? Do not customize too much to a specific cloud service provider, but take a very measured approach as to how you would choose and where you put your applications. Because applications could be more beneficial in one cloud versus the other, depending upon the application and use case.
Yeah, absolutely. One area, and we touched on it a little bit, but either Jennifer or Wade, we talk a little bit about FinOps within Datadog and getting kind of observability around not just the performance of your services, but also the cost. We've had a theme around efficiency, government having to do more with less. How much is FinOps talked about on a regular basis within your experience of the organization, and what's some of the actions coming from that?
So at Leidos, we have been talking about FinOps. We had a big project about it and using data. One of the things is our systems were antiquated, so we needed to update them, and we had a product called Data OS to analyze the data so that we could really have a good view of all the systems and the cost, because it's in so many different systems. That's the real pain. And then making sure, garbage in, garbage out, you want to have good data. So then analyzing that data, make sure it was correct. So FinOps has been a pain point even for the private sector.
This is one question I'm really excited to answer. CMS is very mature as it relates to FinOps and cloud cost optimization efforts, right? And we've really built our model about enabling customers and stakeholders around how they optimize financially in the cloud. Last year, as part of our cost streamlining, cost consolidation effort, right, we took a measured common sense approach to engaging with our customers, and we cut a little over $15 million just by doing things like finding S3 buckets that are unused, right, unconnected RDS, those type of things that were just common sense, very easy, low-hanging fruit things that we could specifically find through our structured FinOps. And we're really excited about the future as we're about to release some new FinOps tools, a new FinOps tool that we call Lens, right, that's going to support the enterprise, but also drive us into V2 across multi-cloud.
That's amazing. Well, I want to thank you both. Please join giving our audience, speakers a hand.